Welcome to the SpiritWoke podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SpiritWoke podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Friends, welcome back to the SpiritWoke podcast. Today we welcome Diana Palm, medium, author, and spiritual DNA healer. In 1995, Diana was taught by a healing priest in Medjugorje Bosnia how to clear dark entities so that individuals could heal. She studied mediumship at Arthur Findlay College, the world's foremost college for the advancement of spiritualism and psychic sciences in 2010, and has been a ThetaHealer since 2006, instructing certification courses. She has utilized her unique spiritual gifts with countless paranormal investigation groups worldwide and founded the Afterlife Research Society to provide proof of the afterlife. Diana works with individuals who have suffered grief, trauma, and sudden spiritual awakening. She clears ghosts and hauntings and helps individuals develop their own spiritual gifts through a variety of classes. Diana is the author of Setting Spirits Free, Mediumship Scrying and Transfiguration for Beginners, and Spiritual Anatomy Divination Cards and Guidebook. So welcome, Diana, to the SpiritWoke podcast.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. And, you know, as I was reading through your bio and the books that you've written, just to share with the audience who's listening in, I actually came to know Diana through one of her books. I picked up Mediumship Scrying and Transfiguration for Beginners at a local bookstore here, and I was just kind of perusing through the book in the bookstore prior to purchasing it, and I looked on the back of the book and started reading through Diana's author bio and noticed that she lived right here in the same city that I lived in, so the world-famous Diana Palm, not a stone's throw from me. I couldn't believe it.
And Stillwater is such a great place for me to develop my mediumship abilities and everything I do.
Yeah, it's truly a beautiful city, and it's one of my favorite places in the world. And so it's just kind of cool to find that Diana is here. And so I reached out to her and ended up following her on Instagram and a variety of different places. And I reached out to her, and she kindly agreed to join us on the podcast. So we're thrilled to have you with us, Diana. So grateful for your time.
Thank you.
So today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic. It's something I've been really looking forward to speaking with Diana about, and it's on ghost spirits and spiritual awakenings. And so let's kick this off, Diana. I usually ask all of the SpiritWoke podcast guests this because I like our audience to be able to hear people's stories, you know, and just kind of see all of the different types of, you know, awakening stories that are out there, because, you know, we all kind of just have our experience, but I think it's interesting to see that, you know, spiritual awakenings can be different and varied depending on who the person is that experiences that awakening. And so, Diana, would you tell our listeners a little bit about your awakening experience, what sparked it, and what the journey's been like for you?
Well, I was raised in a very strict Catholic family where we were not allowed to talk about mediums or psychics or anything like that. So it was kind of unusual for me to have these gifts and abilities, and I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. So as I was growing up, I realized I was very, very empathic, and I could literally just look at people in a mall and know what kind of health problems they had and know if they were going through abuse at home. And I was always just praying for answers, like, how can I help everybody? It's like I have information in my head about them, but unless they tell me or confirm, how can I reach out to them, or how can I find help for them? So that's how my gifts were first coming in, is just real strong empathic abilities and just a sense of knowingness. And then when I was about 18, I began to hear what most people would call their guardian angel or spirit guide. And when I was going through really difficult times, I'd actually hear him say my name, like, hello, Diana. And he said that to me a number of times when I was really going through a lot of turmoil and emotional conflict. And every time that happened, I would literally be like, it'd be like in that stage between wake and sleep when we're most open and receptive. And I would fly out of bed or fly out of the tanning bed or wherever I was at the time and look around, and nobody was ever there. And so that was audible, and it was something, that I could hear with my regular ears, but nobody else could hear that. So that was a little spooky. And I do remember telling my mom at the time, I was 18, I think, when I told her about the voice I heard. And she said it maybe God was calling me home. So I thought, oh my God, am I going to die? Is that true? And I didn't have anybody to ask about it. It's not like there are, people that were credible or were within our family or our scope. And so I started really reaching out and reading books and going to metaphysical stores to try to figure out what was happening and what was going on with me. When I had my daughter, I was 24 years old, and then I started seeing spirits all over the place, and oftentimes in my bedroom when she would be in bed with me. And I really terrified at some points, because it was like, there's a man in my bedroom, and I don't know, is this like alien? Is it a ghost? Is it a demon? What is it? I don't know. And do they want my baby? So that was really terrifying. So I did a lot of reaching out for help at that point too. I was living in Tucson, Arizona, and then moved to the desert in California. So while I was in the desert, that's when I experienced a ton of spiritual activity in the room. And I remember laying in bed, holding my baby and wrapping my arms around her and just praying, like, Jesus, keep us safe, please protect us. And then I would wake up and the spirits would be gone. So I had things like that were opening up and expanding for me. I think they became very heightened once I had my daughter. And she did come in with all her gifts and abilities, so she could see them. And she could see even more than I could. So I had to develop and take classes so that I could keep her and myself safe.
Do you recall how old you were when you first started to experience these knowings or seeing these things, these spirits?
Well, I know, like, the knowing, the empathic, the knowingness. I think I always had that. Like, I've talked to some of my siblings that were like, yeah, we remember being at the beach playing and you'd just be walking off on the hot desert sand all by yourself, thinking, and it looked like you had like the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you wouldn't come and play in the water with us. And it was like you had this heaviness, like, how am I going to save everybody? And I do remember feeling that way. And I was, I was a fun kid. I had a lot of friends and I played and stuff like that. But there was this kind of sense about me where I was tapped into something, and it was different. Not everyone was on that same frequency or understanding. And I did always feel like it was some sort of mission or life goal or path. But we didn't talk about that stuff in my family. Those things were not, you just went to, you just followed the regular tradition and go to college, or you go to school and you become this or that. You don't just open up spiritually. So it was really something that was very different.
So you must have felt like pretty alone for a while, like, because you didn't have, like you were saying, like people that you could talk to about it. It must have been, quite a solitary experience for a while.
Yes, it was very solitary. And I did have, I think it was in junior high, I made a bunch of friends with the priests. And so I would literally take the early bus to school and go hang out with the priest for like half an hour or an hour before my school started. Because I was like, it felt good to be around spiritual people. And the priests that I knew at that time were very cool. They were really laid back and non-judgmental. And so I was learning a lot about, I think I found some balance there. I think within my own home, with the way that religion was presented, it wasn't necessarily spiritual. It was more dogma, rules, and a lot of judgments and stuff like that. So I was like, I don't buy that. I don't believe that. So in my scope of reality, I was going to go to the top and go to the Catholic priests and see what I picked up on there. And they were really kind and they weren't judgmental, and they were really accepting. So that was my first place that I went to for help.
That's so interesting. So in your religious experience, I should say in your dogmatic religious experience, you didn't really, although you were kind of exposed to that sort of judgmental side of faith, that didn't really ever like resonate with you. Like you were able to just kind of bypass that and go, and like Monopoly, right? Like you skip jail or whatever.
Well, I did in a way. Like I just was like, I'll just go to the top then, and I'll meet somebody else within that paradigm that can really show me the truth. So I did have that stubborn streak and unknowingness about what was true and what was right. And my desire was to connect with God, not a particular religion or dogma. So some of that didn't make sense to me. So I did find a lot of comfort there. And I think it gave me a lot of discernment as well. But even that being said, I still couldn't embrace all my gifts and abilities, I think, because on the flip side at home, every time I had an experience, I would hear something completely fear-based and judgmental or really scary from my mother. And so I was always like, when I came out and I wrote this book, I was like, oh my gosh, is this wrong? I mean, I prayed and I meditated and I really had to get a lot of clarity before I made myself public and came out to help people, because I was like, oh, I'll probably get cut out of the family again. I'll probably be judged. And, and so I had it was still very challenging for me to come out and to position myself in a place that I could help people. I had this one side that would like totally had a love and understanding for it. But then I had that other fear from being raised in a family that didn't accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. I guess there's no way to escape all of the I guess dogma that comes with religion, because I know I talk to a lot of people who are going through an awakening, and I experienced it too, where it's not with any like malicious intent, but it's sort of like when you believe in something, say like the Bible, and you believe it literally, or maybe not even believe it literally, but you believe what you hear from behind the pulpit. It's not only easy to believe that that you're being judged or you're doing something wrong one way or another, but you almost, and I hate to use the word brainwash, but like you almost condition your own self to really avoid behaving certain ways so that you don't feel like you're doing the wrong thing or sinning or whatever the word that our religion uses. And so, I know a lot of people, when they go through the spiritual awakening process, that's a lot for them to get past, and it's a struggle because, even when you feel like you've kind of shaken that, there's still that like, I'm not worthy, or I have to do a certain thing in order to get a certain thing or be worthy of that thing. And so,
yeah, and it's actually, those words are in some of the prayers, that I grew up with. And it's like every time you go to church, you say, I'm not worthy to receive you. So that's so ingrained in us and so tied in with our relationship to God. So that was one of the things that I had to really heal within myself. And it's one of the things I still work on with my clients, especially when they first come to see me, is like, no, you are worthy. I'm sorry you've been told that. Let's reprogram your mind and your heart to understand you already are worthy, And so some of those things were inserted into religion to not just keep people humble, but to keep some sort of reign or control over them, so that they didn't tap in on their own. So I can understand some of the church's philosophy for why they have done what they have done. I mean, basically, it's an organization, right? And it's and there's a lot of good that comes from it, but some of the old paradigms, they just don't work anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't want to get too far off from our topic of ghost spirits and spiritual awakenings, but since we're talking about I'm really interested in asking you this question, last question on this topic. But do you feel like, or do you believe, we think about reincarnation and we think about, why we're here, and maybe some sort of karma, some karmic cycle. Do you feel like we pick the religion that we're born into because there's something there's something to overcome there within that faith? Like there's something. I don't know if I'm wording it right because I'm riffing right now, but you know what I mean? Like yeah. I'm going to be a Protestant Christian in this lifetime, and it's because, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I do. I believe that we pick our families. I believe primarily we're picking our DNA line because every time we come back in, we can actually see what's recorded in the DNA, and we know what we come here to live through so that we can bring it up and heal it. I think that that's the mission of our souls when we come. And so we look at the kind of the layout and the background, and then we select our families based on that. And I had this experience, having that kind of really, really challenging relationship with my mother. And a lot of it was based around what I would have called like religious abuse. And then I had this vision that really made a lot of sense to me when I was doing some past life work. And I saw her actually being more open-minded in a past life and being killed by the Catholic Church because of it. And then I was shown how that's the reason why she came in so rigorous to the Catholic religion, and why she almost force-fed it to us was out of fear of death. And she was trying to protect us and keep us safe. So she wanted to make sure that we would be on the right side and not be in harm. So I understood from a soul level why her spirit would have presented her faith to us in the way that she did.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful. That's really powerful. Well, thank you for sharing that about yourself. That's so interesting. So, Diana, when we initially spoke, and we were talking about spiritual awakenings, you mentioned that, many of the people you work with who are experiencing a spiritual awakening are typically people who have had an experience with a ghost, a spirit, or a haunting. Can you share a little bit about that with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the things that happens, a lot of people are just living their regular life. They're not particularly interested in the supernatural, paranormal, or psychic areas. And then they have some sort of life-changing experience, or like a soul-opening experience where they begin to see things. Or maybe it's one time, maybe it's several. And they're like, okay, there's something else going on here. How come I have not been given a guidebook for this? And then they're like me, and they're like, who do I go to? Where do I get the answers? So a lot of times when people, what I call a soul opening experience would be like a major life change. It might be a very serious illness. It could be a devastating divorce. It could be, I think I had one when I had my daughter. I think having a child can be a soul opening experience. And I think it really opens you up to other realms and other vibrations, and allows you to be more fluid with experiences in the spirit world. And when that happens, that's where people are really begin to doubt their faith or their religion or how they've been raised. And it makes them question kind of everything.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, that's sort of how I had my spiritual awakening. I moved into a house in Arizona in the Phoenix area, and there was quite a bit of activity in the house. In fact, we had to call the Ghostbusters to come over and help us out, because it went on and on and on, and we weren't scared or anything, but we just wanted to know what's going on in here. And it turned out to be a really incredible experience. I mean, we had a portal in the house of all things, and it was seriously the most fascinating couple of days having the paranormal investigators there and working through that. And so that was like my first experience with it. And it was interesting because, I didn't know what I believed in terms of spirits back then. I still had my traditional religious kind of frame of thought, but wow, all of a sudden all these spirits. And then I started listening to this show called Coast to Coast AM. Somehow, I don't know if you ever listened to that back in the day, but it was a show on the radio, but it was on between like midnight and 3 a.m, and they would have people on who just, UFO, alien abductions, shadow beings, Bigfoot, all that stuff, and so it was just kind of cool to listen and hear people's stories. And I was really drawn to it, it was just fascinating. And then, shortly after, my dad passed, and that shook me to my core. And I ended up talking to a medium who was able to connect with my dad. And that was sort of the last, that was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. That just popped the door wide open. And it was like, okay, if somebody can connect with my dad who's passed away, then there's so much more than meets the eye here. And the things that I believed, I don't know how it ties to this. Like, I don't, so it really forced me to open my mind to these things. And I've just been infatuated with it ever since.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. Like most of the paranormal people, if you go in and start talking to the groups and the people that dedicate their time to helping people with the haunted, they're people that most often either have had a serious loss, someone very close to them, or they've seen a ghost. And they're like, okay, I have to figure this out, and then they start to go down that road and they position themselves to help other people. Once that door is opened, it's like, it really compels you to find out the answers and to learn more. And I think it's great. My firm belief is that we will all experience the spirit world. I do know some people that swear they've never experienced anything. After they spend a little time with me, they do. They'll be like, oh my gosh, this is happening now. And it's like, cool, okay, And it's real important for me to teach them discernment so they're not just seeing any spirits that come around. And then I also teach people how to cross over spirits, because a lot of spirits that I encounter are actually not in the light yet and they're earthbound. And so that's a special thing, like one of my specialties. I'm very close with that energy and making sure that everybody gets to where they need to be so their soul can continue on their path of healing. So yeah, that's what calls most people to the paranormal.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And friends, you've heard it here first. If you haven't experienced a paranormal, any paranormal activity, come hang out with Diana for a couple of days, and your life will never be the same again. So,
well, I feel like we do in childhood, and I feel like we have these pivotal moments in life where we really do like these soul opening experiences where we could have something step in. Sometimes we're closed our awareness or we shut it out. We don't want to believe it. But then the other big time is on our deathbed. We definitely experience the spirit world as we're passing from this world and our loved ones are gathering to come get us. So I'm always like, yeah, it's never over till it's over. Everyone will experience it some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And as they should, because it's truly a wonderful thing. So Diana, question for you. So you talked about helping spirits cross over, maybe spirits haven't gone to the light yet. What does that mean? How do spirits get, stuck here? I think, a lot of people imagine, the process of dying, it's like, okay, whether it's a sudden death or an illness or you just die of natural causes and your soul exits your body, your spirit exits your body. And there's this beautiful white light off in the distance and you kind of go to it and move on to the next chapter. But I guess that doesn't always happen that way.
Well, right. The light is always there, and it is free will, because we have this amazing gift that was given to us of being able to have free will. So there's a timeline after we pass, after our spirit leaves the body immediately when we die, and hangs around for about 9 days. So during that time, that's when a lot of people will see and experience their loved one that passed. They're going around and visiting everybody. They can be with all their loved ones at once. They could literally be in California with their grandma and be in the East Coast with another family members, and they'll both say, oh my God, they appeared to me at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they'll all have the same story. So that's some of the benefits of being in a spiritual body. They can get around, they can visit, they can go to their own funeral and all of that. And then when the 9th day comes, it's like the window closes, and it is really like the grid. And if they do not choose to stay or to go deeper into the light, that grid closes and they're magnetically pulled to the earth and they get stuck there. So that's the earthbound spirits. And after that point, they literally cannot choose. Like on day 10, they can't go, oh yeah, I made a mistake. I'd like to go to the light now. They have to wait for the next opportunity, which could be hundreds of years in our time. So once that grid closes, they literally need someone like me or someone else that knows how to open that grid up and cross them over to come and do it for them.
So why does that grid close after 9 days?
Well, it's just a natural phenomenon, and it's just like how NASA, when they send space shuttles up, they have to wait for that window to open as well. And so they time it based on that opening. So it's a natural thing that opens and closes with an energetic grid. And it's the same with the spirit world.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, so you get some spirits that are here that haven't found the light and they haven't crossed over. So what's the difference between the nice, friendly spirits that are here and the ones that kind of, cause problems?
Yeah, well, so let's say that 9-day window closes and they become earthbound. At that point, they lose their ability to be with their loved ones, and they literally get trapped wherever they are at that moment. Most of the time, they're kind of pulled magnetically to the location of their death. If it was a scene of an accident, they'll usually be there. If it was a real traumatic event, they'll usually be there. They could be in the funeral home. The funeral homes are always full of earthbound spirits, and some that are still, deciding to go to the light. So there you get a mixed activity at funeral homes. When they're a ghost, they can't visit their loved ones at will, and their soul does not continue to grow and evolve. And so they are a certain level and a vibration. If they were sick, they're going to still feel sick. If they were an alcoholic, they still feel disheveled and confused like an alcoholic. If they're drunk and high when they passed, they're still in that state. And so a lot of times that's I always tell people, don't connect directly with the ghost because you're going to get misinformation. They haven't been healed yet. They're not out of their earthly drama. They have not healed that energy from their lifetime yet. So they're in a state of confusion. That's what some of the negative ghosts are. If somebody was really angry when they died, they'll still be angry if they haven't gone to the light. Whereas, say, if your loved one went to the light and they come back to visit you, they're going to be all about, they want to just say hello, let you know that they love you. It's a whole different vibration and energy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so you have these spirits that are here. Maybe thinking of the ones that are a bit agitated. So let's take it another level deeper. So are there such things as evil spirits or demons?
Yes, absolutely there are. I don't like people to automatically assume, because there's a lot of, kind of hype and drama about that when you go to a haunted location. It could just be a really angry ghost, and they can do quite a lot to disrupt an environment. But when there actually is like a demon or a really negative entity, they do have to be crossed over a little bit differently, because you need to have their sacred name in order to remove them from this plane and send them back to God. Some people are like, oh, they condemn them to hell. I don't do that. I send them right back to God, where they can be transmuted and their energy is cleared. So it's a really beneficial process. And they do exist. I've seen them in all forms. There's not just one kind. I have seen the leathery, tall ones that you kind of see more described in religious context. I have seen those, but I have seen little green monsters, and I have seen little gargoyle type creatures, and every different variety, all hairy. I've seen all hairy beasts. There's just countless varieties that can come through.
Interesting. So where do they come from? Because, it just seems, so you have like a demon, right? And it's here, and when you cross it over, as you said, the energy gets transmuted, but where does that energy come from initially?
Well, I believe a few different places. Some can actually come through portals from different universes. Okay, those would be a little bit more like dark energies that come through negative portals. They come from a negative universe, and they're very, very dark. Those can be cleared the same way as a demon. I think some demons I have seen are created from the human emotions of hatred, revenge, those kind of low vibrations and negative thought forms. If somebody's hateful or hating someone, they can actually create these energies themselves. And then I feel that there are also some that just have been sent here. And I don't know all the areas they come from, but I do know that they are here. And I really feel like they're kind of tempting us and trying to get us off track and trying to screw up our lives to see how much havoc they can cause for us.
Interesting. So I guess last question on this topic. Do they, I guess it may be a silly question to ask if the universe creates those spirits that either, come through the portals or here from other places that, like you said, are here to wreak havoc, but it just seems
Well, I think because we live in a plane of duality. And so I think let's just take like the way the Bible presents it, where there were some fallen angels. I think that really is true. I feel that some were like, no, we don't want to follow these rules. We want to do this and that. And I feel like there was a split. And I think that this earth plane is a plane of duality where we come here as a soul to be tempted by the good and bad. That we're supposed to have duality here so that we can use our free will and make choices and learn from it and evolve. And I think when people are having spiritual battle, that's a really real thing. And when I connect with them psychically, I can literally see it. I can see the angels and the demons fighting upon, over them and all over in their aura. And it's really difficult for people to get out from this. It takes a lot of spiritual strength, but I do believe that the reason they go through it is to acquire the spiritual strength. I don't feel it's a punishment, but I do feel it will bring you into the dark night. And I feel that when you reach out and you do your work and you do your healing and you grow spiritually and you conquer it, you'll never look at that energy again. You'll never have to face that trauma again. So it grows your soul in such a way that it really is also a benefit.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Do you think that people, when they choose, when they make their soul plan, their soul contract to come back, that they know that that's going to happen to them? They're going to have these battles, or do you feel like it's part of, when people come here and they start making free will choices, that they end up facing these entities, if you will?
Yeah, I think it would be really odd for someone not to experience some form of that, and sometimes people may call it like depression or just feeling lost, and they may have gone through a dark period in their life. But if you looked at them spiritually at those points, you'd see spiritual attack. And so I think that we do innately want to experience something like that. Like I said, because this is the plane of duality, we didn't come from heaven to live in heaven. We came here to learn and grow. And how do we do that without having free will and choices and growth opportunities? And so I do feel like our soul chooses that. There's, sometimes when I'm clearing some really nasty entities and demons, they are really vile, terrible creatures. But then I've also had some that have thanked me because they have been literally called here by that person to create this growth experience. And they're thrilled to be able to go home and not have to torture them anymore. So it's kind of interesting.
It's like Friday afternoon, right? Happy hour. No, that's really cool. That's fascinating. I've always been so fascinated by that. I have never dared to entertain that, that side by any means, but I know I'm a big fan of the show Ghost Adventures. I watch it all the time, and it's so fascinating. And I always wonder about that. I always wonder about like these poltergeists and spirits that exist in these locations, and like, wow, how, why, what, where,
and usually people can tell, like if they're being, you could be just living your normal life, you could be fine, and then all of a sudden this deep terror or sadness or depression comes over you, and it's not brought on by anything. That would be like an entity attaching to you, like a demon. Okay. And so that's why people are like, I like to teach them how to be very spiritually aware so they know what their energy is and they know when something else is affecting them, and then to give them the skills and abilities to be able to clear it. It's like, oh, that's not mine. Oh my gosh, I want to clear this immediately. And then their vibration will increase again. So the things that you see on the show, I've experienced that in real life all the time. It's really common for people to come to me and then we find stuff and we're like, wow, you've had this one for 6 years or 20 years or last week, and they're like, wow, I didn't even put that together. I just thought I was sick. I just thought I was tired. I just thought I was miserable for no reason, and they feel so much better once they get them off and they have their energy cleared.
Oh, that's so interesting, and I found that to be, I relate to that because, after my dad passed, I would go through these bouts of, and even years and years after he passed away, I would just go through these times where I felt like I was just I became a different person almost. And it was really hard to predict when it was going to happen. Yeah. There would just be these, maybe even for like a week or longer than a week, I'd just get pulled down into this really dark place, and And it went on for years and years until, really until maybe a year and a half or so ago when I really got into my meditation practice and started to, really kind of embrace the light of things. You know what I mean? Like just really honing in and clearing my mind and clearing my spirit and clearing my body intentionally through meditation. But it was just, and it's weird. Has anyone ever told you when they experience something like that with a spirit that does kind of latch onto them, that there's something familiar, not even familiar about it, but like it just, not that it feels good, but it feels like something that they're used to or something that they know. And so it's
yeah. Yeah, they tell me like they know it's there. Like I was working with this one gentleman a few years back, and he had been through quite a battle between good and evil in his own life. He was challenged to make good choices and would always he'd screw up a lot, and so he was going through that. And when he really, towards the end of his life, because he is passed now, but towards the end of his life, he really wanted to make good, and he really wanted to just make good to everyone that he felt like he had harmed or hurt in life. So he was getting way more, very, very deep spiritually and really trying to cleanse his soul. And when he came to me, I told him he had an entity with him, a really dark one. And he said, yeah, I know I do. I don't want you to send him away. And I was like, okay, why? And he's like, because I know that that's part of the reason why he was sick. Right. But he was like, no, I don't want him being sent away. He goes, I use that for my reminder, because if he's gone, I'll just go back to the way I was living and start screwing up again.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So he goes, I kind of like him to be like a shadow in my back to remind me constantly to make choices of the light. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, but like I can clear that for you and you don't have to go through that turmoil, but that was his choice. So.
Oh, interesting. Really interesting. I guess I didn't have that experience per se. Like I still don't know if it was a spirit or it was just, trauma and loss that I had been suffering with. But for me, it was like, it was just even though it felt terrible, it was like a comfortable feeling, because if anything, I felt more connected to, say, my dad or.
Yeah. Well, that's right. A lot of people, particularly vets, have a difficult time truly accepting healing and moving forward, because their grief and their sorrow and their trauma connects them with all their loved ones that passed.
Yeah.
So there's like this whole thing that needs to happen for them to really be okay and know that they can still honor their loved ones, but they don't have to continue to hold that energy that ties them to that lower, darker place.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And the healing is real. I mean, it's a choice, but it's not just a choice of, will I feel better or will I live in this trauma? It's almost, I won't say lucky. I don't really believe in luck, but I'm just grateful that I was able to find the healing through meditation. And
absolutely. And there's other things, I tell people all the time, if they're going through stuff like that, it seems very simple, but there's like at daily, at home, if someone's going through spiritual battle or they're feeling attacked or they're really feeling depressed and they don't know what to do about it, there's a lot of things that can help clear your spiritual energy that anybody can do. And those are like taking sea salt baths or Epsom salt baths. Soaking in one for like 20 minutes will clear any entities that are attached to your aura. So that's something that can be done. Taking frankincense oil, like very, very good quality, pure frankincense oil, will literally, it's filled with so much light and such a high vibration, it literally will clear you as well. And so I teach people things like this so that they know, hey, I'm kind of suffering here and I'm having a hard time getting my mind right. Then do something physical. Do some things that are physical to help clear your energy and your aura so that you can get your mind in the right place.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's great advice. Those of you guys listening in today, it's fantastic advice. So Diana, in our prior conversations, you mentioned that people who are able to sense spirits or ghosts have some sort of mediumship ability. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a more opening. And so people that are, so I feel, first of all, I would like to say, I really strongly feel every human can develop their mediumship abilities. And I know this because I've been training people to do it, and they may not want to do it for a career, but when they're given the tools and abilities, they can do it. So I know this can be developed, and I know it can be taught. I believe it's part of our divine ability to be able to connect in with a higher vibration. We just have to learn how to get there. But then when there's a natural medium, it's almost as if someone in their lineage, someone before them has done the work. And so sometimes you're just born, like my daughter was born totally open and was seeing angels and spirits, and she was seeing everything. But I kind of knew she was going to, so I started doing the work. But I was already opened a little bit, And so I feel like in my family line, it was my great-grandma that had more of the skills. And I must have gotten more genes from her than other members of my family. So somewhere along the line, someone has done the work. Someone has opened up that predisposition in the DNA. And because the way that the genes are all distributed differently amongst family members, someone's going to have those abilities. They can be born in more natural as a medium, which simply means you have a much higher vibration. Your light is stronger. Spirits are drawn to you, and then you'll have the ability to connect with them.
So does that mean if you don't, and you did say everyone has the potential to develop those abilities, but say somebody doesn't have those abilities developed at all, so it's just like completely buried, will they not ever experience or at least notice spiritual activity around them or paranormal activity?
It's funny because like most of the time, like especially with channeling or when spirit's talking, it comes through your right side of your brain. Like that's where the mediumship occurs, is like on the right side of your brain. And it took me a long time to figure that out. And then since then I've seen, researched that quite a bit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're right. It does happen there, So sometimes people tend to be, they use one side of their brain more than others. If they're real practical and sciencey and that type of mind, they're using the other side of their brain more so than the side that would be receptive. So they may actually be blocking a lot of their own experiences and not noticing them.
Interesting. That's super interesting. Yeah, I guess that makes sense because the right side is the creative side, right? It's sort of the Yeah.
And they say with people with like Einstein was brain balanced. He developed both parts of his brain. So he had a really strong ability to meditate, get answers. A lot of his inventions, he says, were channeled. So he would be considered a medium, but yet he was a scientist. So he was very brain balanced. So it's desirable. If you've got a brain, why just develop one side?
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I feel like, and I know a lot of left brain people, and I think sometimes maybe my left side is a little bit stronger than the right. I know I've taken tests, and depending on the test I take, what day of the week it is, I'm more left than right. Or I'm balanced, but for people who are that left brain that want to become more right brained, you're saying it is possible to kind of train yourself to have your brain change in that way.
Absolutely. Just like you said, what helped for you is meditation. This would also help develop the right side of the brain. Meditation, visualization, breathing exercises, yoga, anything of a spiritual nature that is not, analytical. And I think there's a place for both. I actually happen to be very analytical as well. I don't just believe something because someone says something. And when I go into haunted houses, I don't believe anything I've heard of any of the stories. I have to tap in with that experience and gather my own information. And so I allow myself, my intuitive abilities to kick in and gain what I feel is going on there. And then I like to use the scientific devices to prove that that's correct. You know what I mean? So I really like that balance. I don't believe anybody should believe anything just because they hear it. I really feel like they should back it up with discernment and research or scientific devices of some sort.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for those listening in who think they may be a little bit too left-brained and haven't experienced anything sort of paranormal or mystical, I agree with Diana 100% that meditation, especially like guided visual meditation, because I think sometimes we talk ourselves into believing things about ourselves that aren't true. Like I believed forever that I wasn't creative. When I was a kid, my parents got divorced at a young age, and I went to therapy way back when. And I remember overhearing my therapist say to my dad, I don't know, it must have been 6 or 7, that I was not creative and that she wouldn't expect me to ever be creative. And that stuck with me my whole life. And so when and people would say, "Oh, you're so creative," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. That's not creative." And so but when I started meditating and really started doing some of the deep guided meditations, like I would just go on these journeys, and they were, and it didn't happen all the time, but just really fascinating. And I got to a place where just a couple times where I was able to, where I felt like I was on the other side of the veil, if you will, and I was able to see in very, not necessarily like, hey, there's my dad or my grandpa, even though I knew it was them and I may have seen their face, but just from a very light perspective. And it's like, oh my gosh, like this is like, and it just felt just the knowing and the feeling, not just the seeing. And so, I'm like the last person in the world that thought I'd ever be able to get to that place. So if you're feeling like that's something you want to explore, meditation, for sure, that guided meditation is so powerful.
Yeah, and what I teach people in the Theta Healing class, I get people that are really amazing, smart people. I mean, people in my classes are usually, that come to Theta Healing are like, psychologists, physicists, doctors. I get a lot of very, very smart, analytical people that are also questioning, well, where's that spiritual side and how do I tap into that? Because every human being has it. And tapping into that does create this sort of, well, it's a high vibration, but it's almost adding like you want to be open to the magic in life. You don't have to do everything so hard. There is a spiritual energy that we can all develop and be part of, and it makes your life more beautiful. It makes things more balanced.
Yeah, that is the truth. That is the truth. I don't know what I'd do in my life without this spiritual side, for sure. I'd be lost. So speaking of theta healing and other things, Diana, is there anything you'd like to promote today?
Absolutely. I do have a basic theta healing class coming up August 9th, 10th, and 11th in Stillwater, Minnesota. That is a 3-day class, and it's also a certification course. So when you take the 3-day course and you get your certification, you can actually work with other people. And it's absolutely amazing. It for me, when I found theta healing, it blended everything that I had ever learned from any other modality, everything that I learned from all the different religions that I studied, everything that I knew in my heart to be true, and it just combined it and put it together for me in a really effective way that made sense. And it's so speedy that whenever I'm demonstrating with other healers, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you just cleared 100 people in the room at the same time, and you changed their beliefs and you cleared their spiritual energy, and it took you a few seconds. And I'm like, I know, isn't that cool? So theta healing is really fast, and it's fun, and it's easy to learn, but it really, really helps you connect very easily to your spiritual side and to be able to do healings on yourself and others, and tap in with your own intuition.
That's awesome. And so for those who haven't heard of theta healing before, that has to do with brain waves, right? And getting your brain into the theta wavelength?
Yeah, what we do is we connect to the highest energy in the universe, which is, of course, God, creator, source, whatever your paradigm believes in. But we're taught about the planes of existence. We bypass the spirit guides. We bypass the angels. We bypass our loved ones. We go to the highest energy and connect there. And once we connect there, we can certainly connect with everybody under that, all of our angels and guides and loved ones. But going to the highest energy allows us to tap into the creating part of ourself, which helps us shift our own paradigms and help us shift our own programs. Like how you were told that you weren't creative. That's an actual belief system. I can actually connect with somebody, pull out the belief that they're not creative and put in for them that they are. And your mind will accept it when you're in the theta brainwave.
That's awesome. That is really cool. So check out Diana at dianapalm.com. You can find information on her theta healing course, and I plan on going to the one in August. So maybe we'll meet there if you do choose to attend. And that being said, Diana, thank you so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate all of your wisdom and your passion for what you do.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here.
It was all, the pleasure was all on the side of this microphone. So
Thank you.
All right, everyone. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for listening in.
Thanks for listening to the SpiritWoke podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, spiritwoke.com, and connect with the SpiritWoke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search SpiritWoke. Join us next time for another edition of the SpiritWoke podcast. Namaste.